All right, how's it going, YouTube? So today I'm gonna show you how to do a iPhone 13 rear camera replacement, and then we're also replacing the lens. Okay, so when it comes to replacing just the lens, you basically have two options. I'm partial to disassembling the device. I take the screen off, I take the camera out, and the reason for that is I just want to make sure that I don't get any debris or anything on the actual camera. I have seen people go from essentially not needing a camera replacement to needing a camera replacement because they scratched or got, broken glass on your camera. So that's just my 2 cents. If you're trading this into your carrier, a lot of them don't really care. I would say just do it from the outside, but we're gonna do it from the inside. Now, by far the trickiest part of this is going to be getting the device open. So if you're a normal DIYer, there are two things that are going to make removing the screen infinitely easier. And this is the method I've been using for about 2 years now. Pretty much once I started doing this, I stopped cracking the glass and I stopped damaging the OLED, which is the risky part. But it all comes down to 91% isopropyl alcohol. I use 99, but 91 will also work. Do not use 70%. Basically, this gets in there and it sort of breaks up the adhesive. Or doesn't break it up, but it just it makes it not as strong, so it's easier for the screen to come off. I would still suggest using a little bit of heat on top of that. This is going to be one of those do as I say, not as I do kind of things. But what I'm doing is I start in the center. And then I will lift, lift this way to like maybe 30%. The most difficult part is going to be just getting past these two corners. You obviously don't want to stick your tool in very far. Once again, it's not a bad idea, especially if you don't do this or if you don't have nearly the experience, just to use a little bit of heat. You also want to be careful not to open your screen too far. I'll show you this here in just a sec. But if you take your iFixit Jimmy and you put this towards the bottom, number one, you should see our flex about right here. Number two, just to use this as sort of a yardstick, you don't want to open up the screen more than about this much. Next, we're just going to it just comes out that easy. But we have, in this case, 1, 2, 3 brackets. And that came out for me pretty easily. If it doesn't for you, once again, use some heat and just a few drops of isopropyl alcohol. And you're literally just going to rock it back and forth, and then it comes out. So your top bracket has a little hook sort of right here, so you just want to sort of nudge it, wiggle it off. Your camera rotates that way. Before we disconnect anything, you want to disconnect your battery. Once that's disconnected, we can disconnect our screen. And you're just using, not a whole lot of force. There's a little sort of shelf, if you will, in front of, you actually have a little bit more room. This is a rather...
So, first of all, if you've got this far and you think, hell no, I do mailings. Second, I also buy iPhones. Working, broken, whatever. Even if it looks like this, I'm still interested. Link in the description. Let's make a deal.
Sturdy connector. I mean, don't go crazy and don't use metal. Next, we have our camera, which is right here. And we have 2 flexes. And I think we can just pull straight out. We are going to heat up and start removing our glass. Another technique, I don't have this, but sometimes if you have a bunch of chunks, it's not a bad idea to use sort of a spudger and let me see if I can get a different angle. But sometimes what I'll do is I'll sort of put this over a table and then I'll use my heat gun underneath just like this. And then I'll heat it up. And then you can get some of the larger pieces that way. At least in my case, I don't have any of that going on. So I'm just gonna use a blade. This is I don't even know. I'm gonna throw some text here. This is this kind of blade. So at this point, my glass is off. The next point is just getting the residual adhesive that's left over. Next, we're gonna come in with some isopropyl alcohol, sort of clean this up. Okay, so as we can see, our thinner lens is up top and our sort of thicker lens is on bottom. So we're gonna use one of these. Now I opt, and I'll mention this real briefly, you can get basically standard glass, or you can get they claim that it's real sapphire. So I always opt for a higher quality lens. Different ways that you can adhere this lens. For years, I would just use these adhesive rings. Now I go the extra mile and I use this stuff called B7000. Once again, if you don't have this and you don't want to buy it, as long as you prepped and you cleaned off all of the residual adhesive, you'll be fine with just this. I apply a small bead, and at least on mine, you can see that there's obviously sort of 2 layers. So we get rid of the white layer, and then you'll also notice that there's a shiny part and then a dull part. The dull part goes down. Once that's dry, we can then install our camera. So we have these little flaps right here. You can see the Apple logo. That's gonna go in a slot right here. I generally like to install this slot first. Then you can then see these 2 holes. Just sort of smush it in place. Make sure your battery is disconnected, and then you can go and connect the first and the second flex. Once again, make sure your battery is disconnected, and then we can connect our screen. Now, I like to QC the phone before I seal it up. The last thing that you want to do is throw all these plates in, close the screen, and find out that your camera's defective, or if there's blurry, or there's a speck of dust. So yeah. So for the vast majority of you that are just getting a screen, from a vendor or eBay or Amazon, there's no way around getting rid of this camera message. If you want to pay, I forget the price off the top of my head. I think it's like $151. But here's the actual price. Then you can basically get just those parts through Apple, and then it'll be even though like this camera is a genuine Apple camera, you basically won't have to deal with this message. So most of you will probably opt for this, because I think this cost me, I'm not going to name a number, but it's way less expensive. So the camera looks amazing, much better than it did before. Portrait mode works, and then wide angle and ultra wide both work. Now, it's very important before you close your screen to make sure that you don't have any loose screws. They will generally hang out in one of a couple of places. Sometimes they hang out on the camera because there's magnets there, or the ear speaker, or the loudspeaker, or the Taptic engine, or along the perimeter. So once you verify that, also verify that you don't have this tri-wing stuck like right there. It's gonna go in the same way it came out. So always start by seating your screen up top. Make sure that it's flush, and then give it that crunch crunch.